Hello and welcome to the second live workshop. As you may know or not know, these are a series that will be happening every 3 weeks to educate our applicants, to guide idea creation, and support you as best as we can. So let's introduce the competition. The Blue Ocean Competition is world's largest high school entrepreneurship competition, with prize money going from $250 to $1,000 for our winners. And there's not only one way to win. We have many categories, such as the top 3 winners, the school with the most applicants, and best social pitch, and it goes on. Our winners are not only normal winners, they're international winners, and this is very impressive for your college application process. Additionally, for the first time, we are offering internship opportunities for our winners this year, so make sure that you reach for the stars with this competition. And make sure you stay to the end for a new early bird opportunity program at the end. So let's introduce our panel. Today's live workshop will be featuring the founder of the Blue Ocean Competition, Mr. Benavidez. So let's introduce the panel. Mr. Benavidez, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to be here. Please introduce yourself.
Thanks for having me, Shivani. I'm Nicholas. I grew up in Ellicott City, Maryland, where I founded the Blue Ocean Competition as a high school junior. From there, I went on to Stanford, where I did undergrad and a 1-year master's, and I'm now living in San Francisco and working as a data scientist at a fintech startup called CentiLink.
Wow, very impressive. And it's very interesting to see how your experiences with the Blue Ocean Competition shaped your future. So thank you for introducing yourself and welcome. Next up, we have Yuhi. Yuhi is also an executive committee member, but she's unable to join us at the moment. But hello, I'm Shivani, and I'll be leading the workshops along with different executive committee members. I enjoy participating in the competition because I enjoy behind the scenes because I can give everyone more opportunities. Also, we have the executive director of the competition, Dr. Z. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, everybody. I'm very happy to be here, and I'm happy to say that I met Nicholas many years back when he started the competition and when he was a high school student. So that's really exciting for me to see how these students, go up and become executives in their own right. So I'm very excited to be here. And but I leave it to Shivani to ask the questions for Nicholas, how he started it, and run this workshop. But I'm glad to be here. I'll be on mute. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Z. So today's agenda includes doing the Q&A with Mr. Benavidez, and then we'll go ahead and talk. Our questions are going to talk about the competition origin and all these other bullet points. And then we'll give you all the opportunity to meet your other participants or a team forming live activity, and we'll give you some resources you can use to make your best idea. So now, speaking of the Blue Ocean Competition, where we come up with ideas according to the Blue Ocean strategy, how did you come up with the idea for the competition?
Yeah, so I was junior in high school, interested in business and generally just kind of unsatisfied with the programs and opportunities that were available at the time. DECA and FBLA were sort of the primary business groups that existed in most high schools, and I enjoyed being part of that. I made a lot of good friends through those groups, but the sort of multiple choice nature of a lot of their competitions really felt like it was just limiting the creativity and excitement of sort of what that could become. And I think a lot of that was less focused on entrepreneurship and more the sort of traditional aspects of business that you might think about: accounting, marketing, finance, things of that sort. And so I'd wanted to kind of participate or be involved with something that was more entrepreneurial. Didn't really come across anything at the high school level that kind of met that criteria or sort of fell into that flavor of things. And so decided, why not create that myself? And so I put together a team of other students from my high school Centennial High School in Ellicott City. And that was sort of the origin story and how we all got started.
Wow, what a beautiful origin by an entrepreneur for student entrepreneurs. Now, you mentioned that you started this when you were a junior in high school. So this prompts me to ask, what difficulties did you face while creating your nonprofit or this competition?
Yeah, in the first year, there were certainly a lot of difficulties. We really limited the scope the first year. It was just Howard County, which was, I think, 12 public high schools. And so the set of people that we were marketing to was fairly limited. We kind of knew who the other business teachers were at those schools and were able to get in touch with them, share information, and get people excited about it. I think the challenge the first year was more on the fundraising side. As a brand new competition, we needed some money to be able to offer the prizes, cover expenses for the event day, which when we started was not virtual, which some of you may be used to. It was like a full day conference competition type of thing where everyone would do their pitches live. We would have workshops and other things throughout the day that were related to blue ocean strategy and to entrepreneurship. And so there were some costs associated with running that sort of in-person program. And at the time, I was pretty shy. And so asking for money was not something that was easy or natural for me. But we came up with a list of targets that were local businesses. Certainly the sort of student card was a helpful one to play there, and people were generally pretty excited to support a program like this. But it definitely did take a little bit of sort of me getting out of my comfort zone to start making those phone calls and bring in some of that initial money. The challenge the second year, though, was much more on the marketing side when we went from just Howard County to the entire state of Maryland. We didn't have nearly the same level of contacts there at other schools that we could easily access those teachers and share information about the program. And so just sort of getting people aware of who we were and what we were doing was a big challenge. I remember making a lot of cold calls right after school. So in that sort of like half an hour, 45-minute period where teachers were still there but weren't teaching, trying to get in touch with people, tell them about the competition, get them to spread the word with their classes was a big part of our effort that second year. We ended up actually sending out packets of information and flyers to schools that we had trouble getting in touch with on the phone or via email, which ended up working out really well. And funny looking back that, going back to like physical mail, which I think a lot of people would have expected to not be a very effective channel, ended up driving a lot of awareness and participation for us.
Wow, that is very impressive to see how your competition started at a very small county and grew internationally. But you keep mentioning our efforts and we. So you also mentioned that you started this alongside a team. What do you think is the importance of surrounding yourself with a team and a plan?
There's a very, I guess, good and old adage: if you want to go fast, go by yourself, but if you want to go far, go together. I think the scale of what we were trying to accomplish was far more than any one person could do on their own. And so certainly to get to the state level, that required the effort of a lot of different people moving in the same direction. And the team was absolutely critical to making that happen, whether it was raising money and doing marketing, coordinating all of the logistics for the actual event day and making sure things ran smoothly, was certainly not something that I could have done on my own. And I think on the sort of plan side of things, it's great to have a team and you get, more productivity from doing that. But if people aren't kind of aligned and moving in the same direction toward the same goal, then a lot of that work will, not be as productive as it would be otherwise. You might have people that are, duplicating tasks. You might have people that are kind of working in different directions. And so having clear plan with clear responsibilities helps to just make the whole process more efficient.
Yeah, and you mentioned that you wanted to find people who align with the same vision. So how do you find these people?
In the early days, it was really my friends from FBLA. Like there was some prior there that, they were generally interested in business. And so they would be more receptive to something like this. I gave a presentation at one of our just weekly FBLA meetings at school, sort of outlining the idea, what I was hoping to accomplish. And from there, people were excited to be a part of it and wanted to be involved. So I guess to kind of boil that down and summarize it, you want to try and find a group of people that have similar interests as you. Maybe that's from school, that might be in a community on the internet, but kind of find whatever you think that group of people is that's most likely to be excited and really share your vision and what you're hoping to accomplish with them. And hopefully, that resonates with at least some number of them that would be, excited to join and be a part of the group.
That was incredibly insightful. Now, changing the lens a little bit, this next question is going to focus more on students and how they can come up with ideas such as these. So, how did you actually come up? What is your advice on coming up with a novel business idea?
Yeah, I think this is probably the trickiest part of the competition for a lot of people, and understandably so. If coming up with a really good idea was easy, then everyone would be starting really successful companies and making a ton of money. So obviously that's not the case. I think there's a couple of pieces of advice here that I would give. One is to try and find an area that you're excited about and passionate in. I think having that knowledge, but also, the desire to learn and go deep in one area will surface ideas in a way that wouldn't if you weren't, so interested in a particular field. So that's sort of one way to generate it, is go deep in sort of one vertical, one industry, one market, and really trying to understand sort of, what's working here and what's not. But for people that maybe don't have that thing right now that they're super passionate about, or just really gets them going, I think the best advice that I could give is taking sort of a need finding based approach to this. And need finding is a term from design thinking, which is really the process of identifying, prototyping, and then evaluating ideas. And in need finding, the goal is really to just kind of go out into the world with an open mind and an eye for curiosity, observing the world around you and figuring out, what's inconvenient, what experiences do you or other people have that are unsatisfying. And when you come across those things, starting to think about, what would make this experience better? And is there, a product or a service that could meet that need and make that experience better for people? So a lot of big companies out there today, probably started from some observation around, the pain of going to the store or shopping online or applying for a credit card. And so these little nuggets or observations that you have can ultimately turn out to be really powerful and turn into really big businesses. So you just have to keep an open mind and sort of let yourself observe and critique the world around you.
Interesting take. Now, what determines the success, or in a way, the sustainability of a business idea?
Yeah, there's a lot of things that go into it. I think having a good idea or good concept is obviously a part of it, but far from the whole thing. It comes a lot down to execution. The team that you have in place, are they capable of kind of rolling with the punches that will come as part of starting a business? It's not all going to be smooth sailing. So having a team that's able to adapt and adjust is, I think, really important ultimately to creating something that is successful. There's a guy named Alberto Savoia who spoke at one of my classes at Stanford. He wrote a really good book on something called prototyping, which is kind of like fast ways to validate an idea before you actually build anything. And something that really resonates with me from his talk is sort of the most successful people will fall in love with the problem, but flirt with the solution. And kind of concretely, that is, being obsessed about the problem that your customers are facing, but being open to how exactly you solve that problem as you get, new data and information back based on experiments that you've tried, and not necessarily being married to the first idea that you have, because oftentimes that's not the best or the optimal one, and only by kind of going through different versions and experiments will you kind of arrive at something that is really effective and will scale well.
Thank you for that. Now I'm going to hand it over to my partner, Grace. Grace, if you'd like to ask the next questions.
Okay, sure. So the next question we would like to ask is, how does your funding of the BOC follows the Blue Ocean strategy?
Yeah, that's a good question. Blue Ocean strategy is about creating, untapped markets, and I think the competition in its sort of early days definitely sort of fit that criteria. There were similar competitions that existed at universities and colleges across the US when we started the high school sort of version, but there was not really anything broad scale at the high school level. There might be some individual schools that had programs, or there were some competitions like the Diamond Challenge, which was for high school students, but run kind of by full-time people at a university. There wasn't anything at the time that was by and for high school students. And I think that's really what differentiated us early on. We understood probably better what students were looking for and excited about than someone who was, working full-time as part of an entrepreneurship center at a university. And yeah, we could relate better to those students, how to communicate with them and find and create something that was of interest and exciting for them to participate in.
That's very inspiring answer. And the next question would be, what is the most important quality for a young entrepreneur who are starting a business?
Grit is one that comes to mind for me here. There's a lot of ups and downs in starting a business, starting a company, and ultimately the people that succeed are the ones that are able to, weather the downturns, get through sort of the bad times because they're just so convinced that their idea is going to work, are ultimately the ones who sort of make it to the finish line and have the success. So being driven and just willing to persevere through a lot of difficulty and uncertainty seems to be the qualities of the people who really end up having the most success.
Okay, definitely agree with grit. That's a very important quality. So the next question will be, how will skills learned from Blue Ocean build up to the student's university career in the future?
Yeah, I think the experience of working on a team to come up with an idea and pitch it as part of the competition is a pretty close proxy for a lot of what, college and ultimately the real world is like. It's rare that you're, working by yourself without, anyone else. And so getting comfortable working with a team is certainly something that you'll have to do and will serve you well in the future. The pitching component of the competition and working through, how do I clearly communicate the problem, the solution that I'm solving, and some evidence that we think this is going to work or will be scalable, is really crucial. I think there's an aspect of sales in everything that you do, whether it's convincing a college that you're a good fit for their student population, whether it's interviewing for a job and convincing whoever's making the hiring decision that you're the right person for the job, whether it's a project that you feel strongly about and are trying to get some time or resources allocated towards. You need to be able to sell and to communicate your ideas in a way that's understandable by a wide variety of audiences. And I think the experience of having to pitch your idea for the competition is a great sort of exposure and experience as far as that piece goes.
So if you were a participant, what will you do if you won the BOC?
Interesting. I've never participated, which may be a surprise, but being behind the scenes was always enough work as it was that I didn't have time to enter a pitch. But I would be thrilled if I won as a participant, especially now that we have thousands of students and hundreds of teams from around the world participating. It was a little bit easier to win when there was like 20 teams the first year. But yeah, I mean, it's a huge honor, something that I and whoever wins should be extremely proud of.
Well, thank you so much for your insight, Mr. Benavidez. Now we'd like to give our participants an opportunity to get to know each other. The breakout rooms are not going to hold, I think we have some doppelgangers. So anyway, let's go ahead and figure out how to open the breakout rooms. If not, we would just open up the floor to some of our participants. So Malachi, Nitika, Adi, or Akash, if you'd like to come off mute and answer the following questions, just so that your other peers get to know each other, that would be great. So the goal of the breakout rooms was to give our participants an opportunity to get to know each other and have a couple rounds. And in this way, you would be able to meet your quote unquote other half, and you could exchange social media or contact information to consider partnering up. But if anyone would just like to come off mute and introduce themselves, that would suffice. You can also put it in the chat.
And actually, in the meantime, I have a couple of questions for Nicholas as well, while students figure that out. Nicholas, I'm wondering what your original vision was for the competition. This year, now we are standing at about 138 countries, so 2,600 participants from 138 countries who are going to be competing virtually and so on. But I've always thought about, what was your original vision as to where this competition should go? And then could you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, of course. There, I think, have been a couple of things that have been consistent about our philosophy since we started. And the biggest piece of that is creating competition that's accessible, really, to anyone that is interested in participating. We were early on geographically constrained by kind of who we could have join us, but we always wanted to make it free for students, and so that motivated some of the sponsorship component of it in order to make that possible. But Yeah, as we expanded, we saw that there was a lot of interest from areas outside of our kind of geographical presence in Maryland and eventually in the Bay Area in California. And that motivated the virtual component of it, which has obviously grown like crazy. I would be lying to you if I expected when we started that we would ever reach this scale. And so I'm blown away every year by just the number of people that are participating and have found out about us.
Yeah, yeah. And I also wonder what, if anything, you think about that you would have done differently. If, I mean, it was all as you went through it with your teams, you came up with ideas and you changed the direction of the competition as it progressed. But is there anything that you think about that you would have done differently or that could have like impacted the competition in a different way?
That's a good question. Certainly, if we had opened up the virtual component earlier, we may have seen broader participation,
Mhm.
but I don't think that would have been obvious until we had gone through several years of sort of the original model and sort of starting to see the limitations and particular limitations of scale of that sort of thing. So I guess easy to say in hindsight that that would have been, a better and more efficient approach, but I don't know that we would have realized that until we had gone through the sort of initial versions.
Yeah, and COVID sort of forced us into that as well, right? COVID has opened up so many of these markets where the in-person competition was no longer an option. So we had to consider these other things. Okay, that's great. One other question. So all of our students, participants, committee members, they are of course now students, and many of them are now focused at on their college apps and so on. So I want you to share with them what are some of your learnings from the competition that really helped you in your college life. That I think these students think about a lot because their immediate next step is going to be the college. And so which are some of those things that really came in handy for you in your college, things that you learned in the process of organizing this competition, or if you have heard from other participants, what has really helped them while they were in college?
As part of the application process or just
Or no,
sort
when
of
you go
general
into
college
college
experience?
and generally go into college and you feel like, oh, this is where the competition helped me. Maybe, speaking up or something like that. Not just the application process, but your in general experience at your college.
Sure. I think the biggest thing for me was just kind of competition taking me out of my comfort zone. I was a pretty shy person growing up, and that was true through a good chunk of high school. But having to, I guess, being put in charge of something like this really pushed me to get over a lot of those things. Making cold calls was definitely not something that I was comfortable with when I started this many years ago now, but that experience, figuring out, how to connect with different people, what messages would resonate with them, and just the work ethic that starting and running this required, I think had served me well through college and through my early working career thus far.
That's wonderful. And how did it help you in your application process?
Certainly the initiative and creating something like this was something that stood out, I guess, compared to a lot of other people that may have been applying. But we talk a lot about how, you apply Blue Ocean strategy to a business, but I think it's equally applicable to your life. if you think about, what is your kind of strategy canvas? What are the things that you are maybe not spending as much time or effort on, that are lower value, at least to you? And how are you kind of doubling down on the things that really make you unique and excited, is how I would think about it. At the end of the day, you're making a pitch to the college about why they should consider you. And so having a compelling narrative and reason as to why, that makes sense is ultimately what it comes down to. And there's elements of Blue Ocean strategy that go into all of that.
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing that. I just want to make one more. I know I'm taking too much time, but just one comment before I leave it to the students again. So when I think about your, all this journey about the competition and so on, I have heard many people say, the high school students would start a business, but where can it go? Because they will go into college and they won't have time to put into the business and so on. And I keep on thinking, oh, but Nicholas did it, right? Even though you did not participate here, you started something in high school, which is living up till now, even though there are now other people who are running it. And that is what any of the high school students who are participating in the competition could do as well, in the sense that they start something that is so powerful that, that runs, even though, and so you stayed involved with the competition while you were in college. Now you are more involved in other things, so you have stepped out, but the thing that you created is still living, right? So to me, it feels like this is, you yourself are such a great example of, something that could start at high school level, doesn't really have to die out because the student has now gone into the college or is busy in other things. It can find various different ways of living and growing and become something really substantially big. So that's very inspiring for me. And I think that should inspire all the other high school students as well, that you can start something that's going to live. It doesn't matter if you are in high school. When you start something big and useful and really high value, there is a chance that it would live and grow and so on. So, okay, I'm going to go on mute over to you, Shivani and Yuhi. And let's see if we have more questions from the participants.
Thank you, Dr. Z. So it was nice to see you guys connect in the chats, but also we need to answer some questions that I received in the chat. So Mr. Benavidez, someone asked, what advice would you give to a student who enters the competition for the first time with the goal of winning?
Good question. I like the ambition behind that. There's a couple of things. I mean, a very obvious one is like follow the rubric. We do see pitches every year that I think are really good ideas that don't necessarily hit all the things that we're looking for, and that will not help your score. So if you're trying to win, definitely make sure that you're kind of ticking all the boxes of things that our judges are expecting to see. But more broadly, one thing that I would like to see more of in the pitches, and I think tends to make pitches stand out, is some level of validation of your idea. It doesn't have to be like a fully functional product, but if you're able to get some, UI prototypes or run a kind of mock service as a way to test out your idea, and you have, evidence and results from that, to me, that stands out and is much more compelling from a pitch that is much more conceptual and doesn't have that same level of kind of evidence backing up the feasibility of what you're doing. So as much of that as you can get, I think really helps to make your pitch stand out.
Thank you. And speaking about pitches, another anonymous user asked, do you have some tips on developing a successful pitch?
Yeah, for me, I think the kind of anatomy of a pitch is actually quite simple. Really what you're trying to communicate to whoever you're presenting to is, one, that this is the problem that you're going after is, big, painful, and worth solving. And two, that whatever solution you've come up with solves that problem in a way that is valuable for the people that are experiencing that problem. Obviously, that's easier said than done. But in keeping those two objectives in mind will help you focus on the pieces of the pitch that really matter. And on top of that, really you're trying to tell a good story. I know a lot of people will tend to frame their problem around some version of, X people experience Y thing, every day. And while some of those statistics can be quite impactful, if you can tell just the story of one person and their experience with whatever they're going through as sort of the hook, that more like emotional story tends to connect much better with people. And once you get them interested in that, then you can jump into, okay, this was one person's experience, but actually this is a huge problem that however many people around the world face every day. And so trying to weave in more of a narrative with your pitch is something that I've seen work consistently well.
Thank you for that. And one last question that we have in the chat. What is the most memorable experience you had when creating the Blue Ocean competition?
It was definitely a couple of days leading up to the first competition. I had found the email address of Professor Kim, who's one of the two co-authors of the Blue Ocean Strategy book, along with Professor Mauborgne. This was, I think, about a week out, and decided to send him an email to explain what we were doing, and was worried, or could have easily gone one of two ways. One would have been, they would have been mad at me for using the Blue Ocean name without permission, which at the time we had been doing. Or two, they, would have been very happy to see the use of Blue Ocean Strategy in high school. And thankfully it was the latter. And they were thrilled to learn that high school students were being exposed and learning about these concepts. Because as the authors of the book, they wrote it for executives, for MBA students, people that were much more experienced in the world of business, and they really never imagined that high school students would be getting exposed to these concepts. They gave us signed copies of the book to give to the winners that very first year, and have been huge proponents ever since. So that's definitely the memory that stands out to me the most.
That's quite touching to see it like a full circle. So this concludes our Q&A. We're going to be talking about the next workshop with Nicholas's father, Mr. Benavidez, on how to identify problems worth solving for the Blue Ocean competition. And this is going to be on December 4th. As always, you can connect with us on Instagram at the Blue Ocean competition and tell us what you want to see next. We also have an ambassador program. Now, this is an incredible new initiative we've started. This is open to all current high school students and previous participants and alumni. You can sign up today, receive an ambassador kit, and your main goal is to spread the word about the Blue Ocean competition. You can win $100 for every 500 ambassador points you earn. You can also win a title such as the Blue Ocean Global Student Ambassador of the Year, and you'll get access to the official certified Blue Ocean Practical Introduction online course and a 1-year subscription to the Blue Ocean Studio, a creative workspace for developing Blue Ocean ideas. So there's no reason why you shouldn't sign up. So you can scan the QR code and you'll be directed to the link where you can sign up on the website. So here's a little timeline that some of our executive committee members have worked up for you. So hopefully within the next few days, you'll have identified a problem to solve and come up with a team. Soon, you'll work together to come up with a meaningful idea or a solution. But remember, like Mr. Benavidez said, that your first idea may not be the best idea. Then, from December to January, you can work weekly to make sure that you have progress with your idea. And we suggest that by February 1st, you are working on putting together your video and submitting. Remember, there's no advantage to submitting the earliest. other than a peace of mind. And the videos and pitch are due by February 18, 2023 at 5 p.m. in the time zone you're located in. So that's all, folks. Thank you so much for joining this meeting, this workshop today. If you have any other questions, I'm sure Mr. Benavidez will have some sort of LinkedIn or a way that you can contact him, but you can also connect with us at the Blue Ocean Competition. That's all.
Thank you, Nicholas, for joining us. Thank you, Shivani and Yuhi. And we'll see you again in the next webinar. Bye-bye.